The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
Hello, hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, downers of all ages. Welcome back to the least comfortable show on the web. It is, of course, The System is Down, the place where we talk about all the uncomfortable topics, the things that your family prays you don't bring up around the Thanksgiving dinner table, things like politics, religion, culture, and domestic terrorism. And if you don't understand that last one, it's because you haven't been around long enough. But I am speaking, of course, about conspiracies. I'm going to start going by, instead of conspiracy theorist, because that's a term coined by the CIA, I'm going to start going by domestic theorist, because I feel like that pretty well sums it up here in 2019, where thoughts are criminal actions in the United States, or at least that's the direction that we're heading. But welcome to the show. Hi. I hope you're having a great Monday morning, and hope this episode gives you a good, joyful commute to or from your place of employment. Or if you're bold and brave enough to listen to it at your place of employment, good on you for finding a good job. But if you're one of the many people who tune into the show every single Monday morning for your weekly dose of discomfort, hello, I love you. I love you so much. And if you are one of the new people here, if this is your first time, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you. Go find the person who invited you, give them a big #MeToo, kiss on the mouth, and a slap on the rear from you and from me, because I enjoy you being here, and I appreciate it, and you're going to enjoy it, because today's episode is my conversation with Dr. Rasa Viharii. Who is this man, you ask? Well, to the best of my knowledge, he is a theoretical physicist for the Chinese government who decided to blow the whistle on some of his findings on the Apollo moon landing, as he calls it, hoax. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. Lots and lots of fun stuff. We've talked about the moon before. We've talked about the moon landing before. You know, if you've been here for a while, you know that I'm working on a documentary called The Moon, the Myth, the Legend, moonmythlegend.com. Shameless plug. Go check it out. But you know that I really enjoy digging into this theory, and I'm all about it right now. We have talked about it recently on the show, actually, but It's a good one. It's a good one. And some of the stuff that he goes over in this, we have discussed already on this show, but there are some new nuggets, some very, very interesting things that he is adding to the conversation, which I find fascinating. So, again, we're going to get into that here in just a moment. Before we do, I got to remind you guys about the Downers Club, which is our patron program. It is currently through Patreon, and it is what keeps this show growing and getting bigger and better and more beautiful and more interesting guests every single week. So if you like what you hear and you want to support, you can go do that at patreon.com/The System is Down. And you will not only be supporting, you will also be getting something in return. You will be receiving bonus episodes of the show every single week, usually multiple bonus episodes of the show every single week. Last week we put out 2 or 3, I believe, and you're getting video and audio content a lot of the times. Lots of fun stuff. Extended interviews, game shows, Would You Rather Wednesday, movie reviews, just stuff that's different from what we typically do here in the main area. Often much more offensive, even, than what we do here in the main area. So go check that out, patreon.com/The System is Down, and sign up for as little as the price of a cup of coffee a month. That is $5 a month at patreon.com/The System is Down. All right, that's it for the plugs. Let's get into what you're here for, my discussion with Dr. Rasa Viharii, a theoretical physicist who works with and for the Chinese government. Fun stuff. Let's do it. Let's get weird. My guest today is a theoretical physicist working in China for the Chinese government, Dr. Rasa Viharii. How's it going, man? How's it going? We finally have you here.
Yes, and I'm so happy this is my first time on YouTube or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you contacted me a couple months back, and we've been working around some schedules and some you jumping around the around the world for work and everything, trying to pin down a time to talk about this, because the stuff that you're putting out there I think is really fascinating and worth sharing. But tell us a little bit more about you and what exactly it is that you do.
Okay. First, let me say, Xi Qi Kuai Le. In Chinese, that means it's a happy festival. Today is actually what we call Chinese Valentine's Day. So it actually all kind of works out. It would have been interesting if we would have waited a month later, because that would be the Moon Goddess Festival. But anyway, we're here today. Okay, so yes, my name's Dr. Rasa Viharii, and I'm working in the field of Nikola Tesla technology, and I'm a quantum physicist. I graduated university in America in 1999, and for let's say in 1999 I was actually offered a job at NASA, because I was in the field of quantum mechanics and astrophysics. I was very specialized in that area, and they wanted to recruit me. Mm-hmm. But I turned down that job, and I left America in 1999, mostly for political reasons. I wasn't so happy with what was going on in the country. The Kosovo War, and Clinton, Monica Lewinsky was going on. Sure. And I said, oh, okay, I'm not going to say I knew something like 9/11 was going to happen, but I was like, I had a bad feeling about this country. So I left in 1999, and I happened to be back in America in 2001, and I happened to actually be in New York City during 9/11, and that's really when I started thinking, why did this happen? What else have we been lied to about? And so that's kind of what started me. And I first watched this documentary. It was called "The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon." Yeah. And I watched that in 2001. And then at first I was quite skeptical. I was thinking, well, wait a minute, that's going far, that they faked the moon landing. But then what happened was I was leaving America to go back to India. I was living in India at the time, and I was finishing my medical degree. Mm-hmm. And at the JFK airport, they had a life-size photo of the man on the moon. And you cannot really, when you look on your internet, on your computer screen, you can't see it. But if you actually get the high-resolution photo and you blow it up, then you can see the cut between the foreground and the background. There's a different pixelation. Right. This is what they call the Stanley Kubrick foreground projection. Right. And that's what kind of sold me. I was like, because I had heard that was what they did, but when I actually saw it there with my eyes on this full-size blown-up photo, it's so clear. Sure. And from there, I really started to research, more about the moon landings and what did not go on during that time. So you're turning down NASA. That didn't have anything to do with this. What was your reasoning for, turning down the offer from NASA? Yeah, I just wanted to leave the country. Actually, okay. Like I said, sure. That was 1999 when I left the country. Right. And so I wanted to start off with the point for me, which is really important, which is I guess you would just call it semantics. But for me, it's an important point that I would want to start with. Okay, and that is somebody would come and ask me this question: can you prove to me that we didn't go to the moon? Mm-hmm. Okay, there's two things. First of all, I never said we didn't go to the moon, okay? I said we did not send a man to the moon. Sure. It's a very important point, okay? Yeah. And now the second point is the burden of proof is not on me, okay? The burden of proof is on the party which is making the extraordinary claim. Now, for NASA to say that they sent a man through the Van Allen belts in 1969 and they still can't even do it today, I'd say that's an extraordinary claim.
Right.
So the burden of proof is on NASA. And a lot of people will debate this, but I'm not going to go into that. So NASA is constantly trying to provide evidence that they actually sent a man to the moon, and they're actually quite good at it. As a scientist myself, I really examined their evidence carefully, and they have done an extremely good job. So it's actually not easy to debunk these NASA claims because it's based. They've convinced millions of scientists all over the world. So they're pretty good at providing evidence.
Yeah.
So let's say that. But I want to jump in with this point here. Okay, let us look at what is the actual evidence that NASA has provided. Okay.
Sure.
They claim they sent a man on the moon. Let's look at what is the evidence. Okay. Basically, we have 5 things here. Okay. First thing is there are retroreflectors on the moon. We can bounce a laser off the retroreflector, and we know that the retroreflectors are there.
Sure.
Okay. Now, is that proof we sent a man to the moon? No, because the Russians also put retroreflectors on the moon with an unmanned craft.
Right.
Okay. So that's not a proof of man on the moon. Secondly, the moon rocks. Okay, we have moon rocks here on Earth. Again, the Russians brought back moon rocks with an unmanned craft.
Sure.
Again, it's not proof that a man's been on the moon.
And
okay.
And we went up to Australia to fetch moon rocks, or not Australia, Antarctica to fetch moon rocks. So.
Right. That's an important point. That's an important point because there is like one moon rock, one or two, I don't know how many, which were supposedly shown as being fake, like they're petrified wood.
Right.
So, but that doesn't, there's, what is it, 68 tons of moon rock, 80 tons of moon, not tons, sorry, 80 kilograms of moon rocks here on Earth.
Sure.
And so not all of them are fake, so a lot of people, a lot of the, so that's not to say that, all the moon rocks are fake is not a good argument, okay? Right. So yeah, maybe some of them they collected in Antarctica turned out to be petrified wood, but still there's still 80 kilograms of real moon rocks that we can prove they are real moon rocks.
Right.
But that's not proof that a man has been on the moon. Okay, now the third piece is what they call the third party evidence. It means non-NASA evidence. And there's a lot of it here, but the main thing is that there was some ham radio operators who were listening to the conversations between the Apollo pilots and NASA. It means anybody who could tune into that station could listen to that while it was going on live. Mm-hmm. But again, if you're listening to something, there's radio signals bouncing around in the Earth's atmosphere. It doesn't mean that they were coming from the moon, okay? Right. It just means they were picking up a conversation between a spaceship that was in low Earth orbit and NASA, okay? So again, that's not proof that they sent a man to the moon.
Sure.
Okay, now what is the actual physical evidence of a man on the moon? Okay, basically, we have 3 things. We have the photos, the videos, and then the pictures of the lunar reconnaissance orbiter who took photos of the landing sites.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the lunar reconnaissance orbiter photos. That's pretty strong evidence. I mean, but again, this is what you would call hearsay. Basically, NASA provided these photos, and these photos didn't come out until 2016. So it was definitely, it would at that time it would have been very difficult. It would have been very easy for them to just Photoshop that.
Yeah.
Back in the 70s, they didn't have Photoshop, so that makes it harder for them. They couldn't. So when you look at the photos and the videos, this is they didn't have Photoshop back then. So the actual evidence really is the photos and the videos.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really examine the photos and videos, it's very easy to show that they're fake, that they weren't actually taken on the moon.
Sure.
So there's a lot of points that I want to go into about these. Like, for example, one of the arguments a lot of people make is the shadow debate, right?
Yeah.
The whole shadow debate. And so, okay, you have converging shadows and diverging shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the converging shadows is not a good evidence, because in order to create converging shadows, you have to have two light sources.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the problem with that is, say you see a rock and it's giving a shadow, and if there was two light sources, then that rock would be giving two shadows.
Right.
Okay, so the only way they could have faked that would have been to do cropping. Like in those days, you have to actually cut a photo and put two photos together.
Yeah.
And I don't think they went through all that work,
Mm-hmm.
But when you have diverging shadows, what you have is one light source which is very close, okay? And that is the proof that they cannot debunk,
Sure.
When you have a close light source and they make, I'm just saying, because they always try to, these debunkers
Mm-hmm.
always try to, they take certain points and they try to debunk it, but they're very carefully selecting which points they're trying to debunk,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so there's so many other points that they can't debunk. So when you have these diverging shadows, it's a proof of a close light source. Mm-hmm. And they always try to say, oh, the ground is uneven and this and that. It's nonsense, because they're landing on these very flat areas.
Yeah.
So there's some of the shadow evidence can be debunked, but some of it cannot. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the main thing is, one of the what I would call a smoking gun is the inconsistencies between the videos and the photos, okay? And especially when there's two videos of the same thing. Like, for example, when Armstrong was like planting the flag on the moon,
Mm-hmm.
okay? There's one video up in the ship which is looking down at them, and then there's another video on the ground which is just shooting them.
Mm-hmm.
From the ground, okay?
Yeah.
And when you compare these two videos, the one where they're down on the ship, he just plants it once and it stays stuck in the ground. But when you look at the ground video, he plants it and it falls, and he plants it and it falls, and he plants it, and then the third time it finally stays in the ground,
Right.
So these kind of inconsistencies are basically smoking guns. And there's a few other of them. Like, for example, especially when the two ships are docking
Mm-hmm.
in the lunar orbit,
Mm-hmm.
there's one scene where of course, like when you watch these, the ships move like
Right.
It's impossible in space, okay? It's impossible. Like, I don't know, if you fire a blast, the ship will rotate, and if you want to stop it to rotate, you have to fire a blast in the opposite direction.
Right.
So it's going to be very slow, and it's not going to be fast jerking thing,
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another thing, which is like, there's this part where the ship is moving, and then there's this radar antenna which just like falls because somebody forgot to tighten the bolt, okay? And I have that example. I think that in my opinion, I think that Kubrick left that as a smoking gun, you know.
Sure.
So
Well,
let's.
So do you think that like there are a lot of people who point to Kubrick as being a part of it? Do you believe that strongly, that he was like a part of it, or do you think that they just used his technology from the time?
I think that he was personally involved in helping them figure out a way to make it look real.
Yeah.
Okay. And there is like there's one of the most obvious, of course you have The Shining.
Yep.
And the hidden messages in there.
Yep.
But also the other fact is that his last movie, Eyes Wide Shut, was scheduled for release on September 16 on the 30th anniversary of Apollo. You know, so I think he was trying to whistleblow. Sure. In several. And even the name of the movie, Eyes Wide Shut, it's like, you're just sleeping here. So it's a great, the whole movie is a whistleblower thing. So I definitely felt he was involved with it, at least in Apollo. You see, I think that he was brought in 1968. Okay. Yeah. So, and this was, let me explain why. Okay, in 1968, the Russians sent 2 turtles around the moon back to Earth. Okay, now when these turtles got back, they were all messed up from the radiation. Okay, of course the Russians won't admit to that. They make some kind of a lame excuse like, oh, these turtles were like starving, we starved them, and so that's what messed them up, which is nonsense.
Why'd you starve them?
Yeah, it's total nonsense. Because the reason that they selected turtles was for 2 reasons. Turtles are excellent at hibernation. They can sleep through the whole winter without eating or even breathing, Their heartbeats slows down, and so like, and also turtles are extremely resistant to radiation. Okay, so that's why they selected turtles. Okay, so what happened is in 1968, the 2 turtles came back and they were all messed up from radiation. And then there was no doubt in anybody's mind that it's not going to be safe to send a man through the Van Allen belts. Okay. So I think that at that time they're like, okay, we know we're going to have to fake it. Let's get some help here. Sure. And then Stanley Kubrick was brought in. So right after the 2 turtles came back was Apollo 7. Okay, and Apollo 7, it was just some astronauts flying around the Earth for 11 days, and it was extremely well filmed. Everything from Apollo 7 on was very well filmed, and they started making plans. How are we going to fake the real thing?
Yeah.
So
is there a name for the turtle mission that people can look into?
It's called Zond 5.
Zond 5.
Zond, Z-O-N-D, Zond 5. Okay. Okay. So let me kind of step back here a little bit, because I want to go into the Van Allen belts. Sure. Because that is really, really my specialty here. I work with the Nikola Tesla technology, and that's completely based on Van Allen belts. Okay. And so, I'm going to be really an expert in talking about what's going on here with this. Okay. So let's start off in how did we discover the Van Allen belts? Obviously, they were named after James Van Allen, right?
Yeah.
So what happened was, in 1958, James Van Allen sent 3 probes up into the Van Allen belts. Okay? The Explorer 1, Explorer 3, and the Pioneer 3. All of them took off in 1958. Okay? Also, in the year 1958, the Americans were exploding atomic bombs up in the high atmosphere
Right.
to see what effect that would have on the radiation belts. Okay, they were in 1958. A lot of people have heard about Operation Starfish Prime, where in 1962 they exploded a huge bomb, and it knocked down a bunch of satellites. Okay. But that was much later. I'm talking in 1958. They were sending up probes. They were shooting. There was 5 nuclear tests where they were blowing up bombs, and they were measuring how it would affect the Van Allen belts and things like that.
Right.
Okay. So then the next year, in 1959, James Van Allen issued a statement in the Scientific American magazine. Okay, I don't know if I don't have to read you the whole quote. He's talking about, we're going to have to design a special kind of radiation shielding, but his quote says this. He said the best choice is to send a craft through the poles to avoid. He called it the exact quote is the radiation-free zones over the poles. Okay, so let's look at that. Let's really look at that, because this is a key point. Okay, so I've got my little drawing here. Hopefully you can see it. So this is the official NASA version of the Van Allen belt.
Right.
Okay. So what they say is, okay, we just flew around it like this, right?
Yep.
We passed through this shallow part really quickly. Okay, first of all, this picture is totally nonsense. The Van Allen belts do not look like that. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm going to draw you the real picture here. Now, have you ever looked at the fields at which magnets leave behind?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Earth is like a giant magnet. You have a North Pole and the South Pole. Okay, you can see that?
Yep.
North Pole. So the magnetic fields come from the North Pole to the South Pole. Now, what James Van Allen said is that we actually need to launch our ship at the North Pole so it will come up.
Right.
Because he was using the theory that this is where the less radiation. If you're launching from anywhere down here, you're going to have to go through the Van Allen belt.
Sure.
So in 1959, he was thinking to actually launch the ship from the North Pole. That's what he said in the Scientific American magazine. Okay? So the radiation from the sun, it hits these magnetic, it's called the magnetosphere, right? And the radiation passes around the magnetosphere. Okay, so really his theory of, even if you took off from the North Pole, the Van Allen belts are still going around here.
Right.
So you're going to have to go through the Van Allen belts anyway. The Van Allen belts are going to be huge surrounding the Earth.
Right.
So James Van Allen was part of the whole thing. Okay, he knew that they were going to fake it.
Sure.
But his theory that launching the ship from the North Pole was based on 1959 thinking. Okay. So let's look at what do we really know about the Van Allen belts. Okay, James Van Allen died in 2006, 6 years before they launched the Van Allen probes. Okay, so it was 2012 that the Van Allen probes went out and they could really get an understanding. Now we know that there's actually 3 Van Allen belts, okay?
Right.
We finally, before 2012, we really knew nothing about the Van Allen belts.
Just
okay?
shooting people out in tin cans and pulling it off first try, right?
Yeah.
There's no problem.
No, okay. Yeah, I mean, the only thing we know is that 2 turtles died.
Right.
But, so anyway, so just coming into why I know this, because the Nikola Tesla, the Tesla Tower was using this distance between the ground and the magnetosphere. So that distance there's a resonant frequency. We call this the Schumann frequencies. The Schumann frequencies is a measurement of that distance, and electromagnetic pulses that bounce and forth, and that's where the energy of the Nikola Tesla Tower comes in.
Okay.
So that's the reason why I know so much about this, and because I study it every day. What are these Schumann frequencies? What is the distance to the magnetosphere? And so that's why, that's why I'm more qualified to speak about this subject here.
Sure.
Okay.
Have you seen? You brought up a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Have you seen Bart Sibrel's other documentary called "Astronauts Gone Wild," where he's just interviewing the different astronauts who went to the moon?
Yeah.
And
he actually. Go ahead.
He's interviewing these astronauts, and he asks one of them, how did you get through the Van Allen radiation belts? And he's like, I don't think we went up high enough to encounter the Van Allen radiation belts. And Bart's like, well, it's like 1,000 miles up or whatever. And he's like, oh, well, then we must have just went right through them. Didn't even notice they were there. It's like, seems like something you'd want to know about, since it was a big looming threat leading up to this, and then you pulled it off no problem. Yeah, it's actually 1,000 kilometers. So let me put that into perspective, okay? The space station, okay? The space station is 400 kilometers. Okay. Okay? The highest a human being has ever flown is 600 kilometers. That was in 1999, the Discovery flight STS-103. Okay, that was the highest any human being's ever flown, 609 kilometers. Okay, there was also the Russians sent 2 dogs, but they only went 800 kilometers. Still, they didn't even go to the Van Allen belts. Right. The only living being that ever went through the Van Allen belts was those 2 turtles. Okay, and there was more than 2 turtles. They put some flies and some worms and some other stuff because they wanted to see the effect of the radiation on all those little creatures, But they all got. You see, let me explain the Van Allen belts. Okay. Sure. Okay, the magnetosphere protects the Earth, and it blocks out certain portions of the radiation that comes from the sun. Okay, so life on Earth evolved because certain parts of the radiation were blocked out and certain parts were allowed in. Okay, so once you go outside of the Van Allen belt, none of that radiation is blocked anymore. So if you imagine somebody putting me in a microwave oven and turning it on, it would be 1,000 times worse than that, because the microwave oven is only one frequency, which my body can't handle, and there's 1,000 other frequencies which my body can't handle. Okay. Right. So what's happening now, if you follow the Orion missions, okay, the Orion mission. They're testing out a new type of radiation shielding. So what they're doing is they're trying to put a layer of water between the walls of the ship, because they figured out water is the best way to absorb the radiation. Sure. Now, how are they going to keep the water from freezing? Right. Okay. It's going to have a heat pump that's circulating the water. And it can't be too hot because it'll turn to steam, and it can't be too cold. And also the ship is going to have to rotate because the sun is going to be heating it up, So there's a lot of challenges that they're going to have to face. Now, not to mention the fact that they need this right now kind of proves that we didn't go because we didn't do that then. We didn't have the technology to. So the next Orion mission is going to take off next year, 2020, and it will, of course, be an on-demand flight, but they're going to put some radiation sensors inside of their new water shielding. Yeah.
to see how much, whether the water shielding is work or not.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, okay, we're going to have a man on the moon by 2024. Okay, that is considering that the whole water shielding effect is even going to work, you know? so they're
setting
really
another deadline that they probably won't be able to keep, which we'll have to work our way around.
You never know. Like, maybe it'll work. Maybe this water shielding will work.
Sure.
But but then comes the next question: is the micrometeorites? Okay, if you're on the Earth, on the moon, there's all these little micrometeorites which are hitting the moon. I forget, there's tons of it every hour.
Huh.
Little particles. Like in the Earth, you see shooting stars, right?
Right.
Because they're burning up in the atmosphere. But on the moon, you don't have those, and so they're going to hit you, and they're going to knock a hole in your ship. There was already one time that the space station that knocked a hole through the wall of the space station.
Right.
And they had to patch it up real quick. So so it's not only the radiation problem, but the micrometeorite problem is going to be a hard thing,
Yeah.
So
that's a point that you don't hear talked about too often. That it's like a war zone out there that we're flying really thin tin cans through in the 60s.
Yeah, if you look at the space suits that they claim they wore on the moon, they say, oh, we have this elbow pad and a knee pad which we call the micrometeorite shield. Okay.
Just like, deflect. Oh, okay. Are they superheroes?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So just in case the micrometeor hits you on your elbow or your knee, you'll be safe. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Which let me jump into another topic here.
Sure.
Which is the temperature problem. A lot of people talk about the temperature problem, and a lot of people say, oh, the space shuttle, they would have melted or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
No, what the thing is that space is extremely cold.
Right.
Okay. Extremely. Let's not get confused here. A lot of people talk about the thermosphere of the Earth and how hot it is. No, it doesn't work that way. What it is you have extreme levels of radiation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let me just explain this. If I was on the moon, okay, they say that the moon, when the sun is hitting the moon, it can heat up to 260 degrees of Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Okay, but in space, heat cannot radiate through space. Okay, so let me just give an example. If I was standing on the surface of the moon, and the surface of the moon was 260 degrees Fahrenheit, and I were to hold my hand above the surface, my hand would freeze, okay? Because the heat is not radiating from the surface to my hand,
right.
Okay? What it is the surface is accumulating radiation, and that radiation is being stored underground, but it's not radiating above the ground. So that's how it works. Space is extremely cold, but if it's accumulating radiation, then that object will heat up.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's another point is the heat. I have a list of points that I'm trying to go through.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of points that people make which are not valid points here.
Right.
So I'm trying to cover a lot of the points. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's another important point here, which is the when the ship is landing or when the ship is taking off, you don't see like a flames coming down.
Right.
Okay. A lot of people bring up that point.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's the people who try to debunk that point. Mm-hmm. Okay, they say, oh no, because of the special type of fuel you're using and the fact that there's no atmosphere. Okay, let's talk about that. The type of fuel they were using, when the fuel and the oxidizer combust, it gives off carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water. That is the result of the reaction of the fuel which they were using. So what that means is you are going to see steam. You're not going to see a flame. You're going to see steam. And so what's interesting is somebody in my group showed this the other day. There's a video of the Russian spaceship coming into dock. Mm-hmm. And when it's turning, you see little bursts of steam come out. So you see the steam and a turn. Right. You know, so you know it shows that there has to be that burst of the steam coming out. You know, regardless of whether there's an atmosphere or not. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So sure. That's another. It's another important point. Okay. While we're on this subject, let's go through a few more points, okay? Because a lot of the debunkers like to debunk a lot of the points. So let's look at this, okay? Mm-hmm. The star question, whether or not you would see stars in space. This is a huge one.
The huge straw man argument.
Right. So let's say, you know, I don't know whether you would see stars on the surface of the moon or not, because I've never been there. Mm-hmm. But I'm pretty sure you would.
Sure.
Because okay, but whether or not your camera can pick them up is another question.
Right.
So we have photos from space, and some of them have stars. Some of them are full of stars, mm-hmm. and some of them you don't see any stars. Right. Okay. And so what it depends on is first of all, is it a digital camera or is there film in the camera? Okay, and the aperture setting, the film speed, all these things, mm-hmm. and so it's like most of the digital cameras do not pick up stars. Okay, mm-hmm. and one of the reasons is because most of the time when they're filming, it's on the day side of the Earth. Okay, yeah. We're talking about the space shuttle, which is very convenient. No, they always film things on the day side of the Earth, right?
Sure.
But as soon as you go to the night side of the Earth, it's going to be full of stars, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the thing is, like, but I have photos of them, like, okay, so the important thing is how much of your frame is covered by the glare of the Earth. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's like if you were to slowly turn your camera away from the Earth, you'd start seeing more and more and more stars, right? Mm-hmm. And there's plenty of photos where you can see just total stars everywhere, you know. But again, that depends on the camera settings and things like that, you know.
Right. So again, coming back to the film question, okay, back in the 1960s, they didn't have digital, you know, they were using this Hasselblad camera with supposedly film inside. Right.
A lot of people bring up the point, well, wouldn't the film have just been destroyed? Mm-hmm. But it's not a valid point, because the official NASA story is that they kept the film inside of a radiation compartment to protect it.
Sure.
Okay. But personally, you know, I doubt that, you know, because I mean, they did that in some of the in some of the earlier flights where they were just taking photos of the moon. They had a camera which was covered with radiation shielding.
Yeah.
So they did do that in some of the unmanned flights, right?
Yeah.
They did protect the film with the radiation shielding. Okay. So let's come back to the flag question. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's also a really, really common one, and the debunkers always say, oh, well, they still have their hand on the flag, and then so the flag is waving because they're still moving their hand, mm-hmm. right? That's the official debunk. But the problem is there's still other videos where there's no one near the flag and it still moves, okay?
Yes. Yeah, they always forget about those videos.
They always conveniently avoid that one, you know?
Yes.
Okay, and then another one of the last kind of the other problem, which they conveniently leave out, is the communication problem. Okay, if I was on the moon speaking to you, it would take 1.3 seconds for that sound to reach and 1.3 seconds for it to come back. Okay, so that means there has to be a 2.6 second delay between any communication.
Right.
Hello, Apollo, do you hear me? 2.6 seconds later. Yes, I hear you.
Right.
2.6 seconds later. Okay, nice. See, but you don't see that, if you carefully look at the communications, that delay is just not there.
Yeah.
There's several cases where they forgot the delay.
Right.
So that proves that they weren't on the moon, And especially, a lot of people say, well, who was filming the ship take off? Okay, the official story is that it was a remote-controlled camera, which followed the ship as it went up.
Yeah.
But again, there has to be a 2.6 second delay. If the camera moves up and the ship goes out of the frame, it's not going to be 2.6 seconds later until he can adjust the camera to try to catch the ship again. You know, so it's going to be extremely hard to follow that ship going up with a 2.6 second delay. Okay.
Well, one argument I've heard for that is one of the, I don't remember which one, but one of the takeoffs, it was out of frame, and they, you see it go out of frame, and so they decided not to use that one or put it. It's not that common to find because it was a failure. So they're like, see, they did have that problem. They just overcame it sometimes, and sometimes didn't work out.
Yeah. So it would be, if I try to imagine the situation, it's like, okay, 3, 2, 1, launch. Start panning your camera up because they know that it's got to follow the ship.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we went out of picture. But so some of them, you can see it go out and it takes them a second or so to get it back in. But in other situations, they didn't,
Sure.
So, like I said, this 2.6 second rule, there's some cases where they did follow it and some cases where they didn't, Okay, so this is, I want to come back to what I think really happened. Okay, so I think that what happened was you have the command module and you have the LEM, right? And so in my opinion, what happened is that the command module stayed in low Earth orbit, okay, and they were reading off scripts, okay. At minute 2.3, you're supposed to say this, and at minute 59, they had all these scripts planned out to make it seem like these events happened, okay. But really, they were just in Earth orbit, reading off these scripts, and they were beaming down, a lot of the live video was pre-recorded, okay?
Yeah.
It was pre-recorded on Earth, and they just beamed that down, and everything was planned out. Okay, when you drive the rover, you're supposed to go here and pick up that rock, and then drive over here and pick up, everything was planned out, you know? So they did an extremely good job. And even when you look at the LRO photos of the landing sites, they did a pretty good job of matching up, what happened on the videos to what evidence is there on the moon supposedly. So they did a pretty good job. But I said there's these. So there's another thing which a lot of people overlook, which is called the third stage rocket. Okay. The official name is the S-IVB, okay, is the third stage rocket, and it's a really, I think that this is one of the key things, is because that third stage rocket had the ability by itself to go to the moon, circle around, come back to Earth, to do whatever they want, all remote controlled, okay, and they had cameras on it. Just recently, this IMAX just came out with the new Apollo 11 movie. I haven't watched it, but I've seen clips from it, and there's some trickery there. Like they showed the command module separating from the third stage. But then it was like, wait a minute, how did they film that? And then the guy who said, oh, well, that came from an earlier Apollo mission.
Mm-hmm. So
they admitted already right there to some tricky, oh, well, that was the Apollo 7 clip. We included in the Apollo 11 movie, you know.
Yeah.
So there's some trickery with this third. So what I think what happened was the third stage and the LEM, which was, both of them were unmanned, went to the moon, and they had a robotic arm which could pick up rocks, mm-hmm. could put down retroflectors, all kinds of things, because this is exactly the way the Russians did it.
Yeah. Okay.
There was okay, let me just throw out some names here. There was the the Luna 16. Okay, Luna 16 was the first Russian flight, an unmanned flight which went to the moon, pick up rocks, and brought them back to Earth.
Yeah.
Okay, Luna 16. Okay, so that Luna 16 happened right after Apollo 13. So we know that. So that was Luna 16. That was 1970. So we know that the Russians had the ability to pick up rocks and bring them back to Earth in 1970.
Yeah.
Okay, and Luna 17, they sent a rover. The Russians sent a rover, and the rover could travel around and make tracks, mm-hmm. and all that stuff. So if you want to know what really happened in the Apollo missions, all you have to do is look at the Russian missions, because they basically were just, if you look at the whole space race, they were just like neck and neck the whole way. Okay? Mm-hmm. And whatever the Russians did, the Americans just copied it. Mm-hmm. So what I think what happened was, okay, let's talk to this point that the debunkers always say. They say, why didn't, if the NASA faked it, why didn't the Russians just expose it?
Yeah. Okay,
that's a very, very common argument. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they always say, oh, well, and especially because it was in the heat of the Cold War. Mm-hmm. That's, so naturally the Russians would want to expose it.
Right.
Okay, no, sorry. Okay, first of all, you have to remember, okay, like both the Apollo and the Russian missions were operated by Freemasons. Okay, so they're not. These are Freemasons' buddies, and they're not going to expose themselves. So let's talk about this Cold War thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1965, America stopped producing nuclear weapons. They had already stopped. They had already, like, if you look at the buildup of nuclear weapons, okay, 61, 63, it was the Kennedy years, yeah. And by that time, the Americans had a billion more nuclear weapons than the Russians. Okay, mm-hmm. Like the Russians only had a few weapons that time. Mm-hmm. And by 1965, 2 years after Kennedy, American just stopped it. They said, okay, we've already got so many nuclear weapons, and the Russians are way down here. They only had a few. Mm-hmm. Okay, and not only that, but by 1967, America had already started decreasing their nuclear weapon supply.
Sure.
So what can you talk about a Cold War? Okay, so like I said, it was like, I think what happened was they said, okay, and let me finish that story. By 1977, 1965, Americans stopped the buildup of nuclear weapons. 1967, they started decreasing. Mm-hmm. And by 1977, the Russians passed the amount of nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
So I think that what happened was they made this decision. We're going to let you guys win the nuclear weapons race, and we're going to let us win the moon landing race. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Sure.
We're going to favor it. we're going to fake it, you know. And so because they both knew that it couldn't be done, the turtles died, you know. So it's like,
Right.
and
Yeah.
So
I've also heard the theory that the Russians cooperated because of they wanted to work together on the space station and all that stuff, and so they were like, well, we'll get in cahoots here and just
right.
let people think that we're badasses.
Right. See, let's come back to my point. Okay, the turtles. Okay, the turtles died in 1968. So the decision was made at that point. Okay, you know, America's gonna win the space race, the moon race, but we want you guys in Russia to focus on the space station.
Sure.
Okay. So it was right exactly after that. Okay, the turtles died in 1968. Then Kubrick was brought in. He started filming Apollo 7, Apollo 8, Apollo 9, you know, and then it was in 1969 that the Russians made their first space station. You know, the Russians just totally focused on space station at that point.
Yeah.
They had their first successful space station, then they had a couple failures, and then again the successful space station. And by 1975, the Americans and the Russians ships docked up, you know. So when you talk about a Cold War, you know, it was like they had already docked up in 1975, you know. So the Cold War was over, you know, much earlier than that, you know. This whole thing about who's going to win the race to the moon, who's going to win the nuclear arms race, it was a decided thing, you know.
Yeah.
So this is kind of my point is that the LEM, what they call the LEM, okay, like first of all you see this ship, you know, and the first point is like the astronauts with their backpacks couldn't even fit through the door. Okay.
Right.
You know, it's like if you go to the museum in Washington D.C., it's like, and you see this little door. It's like, wait a minute, how did they get through the door? Well, this is just a mock-up.
Yeah.
That's the excuse. You know. Okay. Well, you know. So anyhow, like, no, and the other point is like, who helped them into the spacesuits? You know. First of all, there wasn't even enough room for them to move around, let alone put on the spacesuit.
Right.
Okay. And then finally, like if you watch the videos of them on Earth putting on the spacesuits, you had to have 2 or 3 people helping them. But let's just imagine, okay, one guy helped the other guy into his suit, and the other guy, he left his gloves off so he could help the other guy in.
Right.
And then he helped him put on his gloves. But then who's going to help the last guy put his last glove on? It's impossible, you know. You need another man without a glove to get that last glove on. So that
it's kind of like when you're a kid going sledding. It's like you help the other person get their stuff on, then you're like, shit, there's still that one glove. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But in space instead of snow. But yeah.
So let's talk about another one of the things that the Apollo apologists or whistleblowers like to, you know, they always say, well, you know, how come there haven't been any whistleblowers in the Apollo mission? Yeah. Right? Okay, there was. Bill Casing was working for the Apollo mission, and he blew the whistle. Okay? So this kind of comes back to my story. You know, I consider myself a NASA whistleblower, okay? I was offered a job for NASA and I turned them down. And now I'm working for people with the same people who are on the Chinese space mission. Okay? And so really it's pretty much all the same space mission. Whether you're American space mission, European space, Russian space mission, Indian, China,
Yeah.
we all share things together.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna blow the whistle a little bit here. Is that here in China, we have taken some photographs of the lunar surface, high detailed photographs. Okay, and we have photographs of the Apollo landing sites, and we know that that what they told us and what went on is not the same thing. We actually have physical evidence that they faked it. Okay, but here in China, we're not going to expose that evidence. The photos of the Apollo landing sites are top secret. They're not available to the public. Okay, and there's several reasons for that. Okay, first of all, the people in China don't really care whether the rest of the world knows that Apollo was a hoax or not. There are some documentaries released by the Chinese government which exposes the Apollo hoax, but it's all in Chinese. You wouldn't be able to understand it, and so they have released it to the Chinese people that they lied about the Apollo thing, and most of the people in China know that.
Yeah. Is it like just the layperson on the street? Is it kind of a commonly accepted thing that those guys are arrogant douchebags who lied about that back then, or what?
Well, the common person on the street in China is not a very well educated person.
Sure.
So sometimes I come up to people and I say, first of all, have you heard about America putting a man on the moon? They're like, no, I didn't even hear about that. But if you talk to some people, say, oh yeah, I heard about American landing on the moon, and I said, did you also hear about it being a fake? Oh yeah, I've heard that too.
Sure.
This would be common response.
They don't really care either way. They're just like, yeah, we've heard it at all. It's fine, whatever.
Hey guys, this is Dan's wife, Kayla. I just wanted to interrupt this podcast to let you know that he puts a lot of work into it for currently no monetary profit. And he has a family to feed. To do so, he runs his own media business called Goulash Media. Dan has a crazy creative brain that makes him uniquely able to take your project, whatever it may be, and make it the full package. So whether you're in need of graphic design, logos, branding, commercials, wedding videos, podcast jingles, music production, music videos, merchandise, websites, pictures, or what have you, contact Dan and he'll seriously make you look and sound awesome. For more information, just go to goulashmedia.net. That's goulash, Goulash, media.net, where Dan caters to the little guy with the big vision.
Some people would then ask me, well, wait a minute, why am I blowing the whistle? If China, see, the thing is that, in 2008, China launched their first space shuttle, which had all the parts made in China. They were really proud of that.
Yeah.
Before, they were just importing parts, right? But now in 2008, they're really proud of that. They're like, we made our own space shuttle, and now ever since then, we made the Chang'e, who landed on the, we landed on the front side of the moon, we landed on the back side of the moon, And how does that work? There's two orbiters going around the moon, and the little rover on the back side has to bounce his signal off one of those orbiters to reach the Earth again.
Sure.
So, but the thing is that here in China, we want to keep our friendship with NASA, because we're hoping that eventually, once NASA figures out a way to send a human being through the Van Allen belts, that they'll let us copy that technology.
Sure.
The same way that they let us copy everything else.
Right.
So the Chinese government does not want to expose NASA. Not yet, anyway. We still want to keep these friendships.
Yeah.
Now, why am I here exposing it? Well, first of all, here in China, YouTube and Facebook are banned. Okay.
Yeah.
So nobody in China is going to see me doing this stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
And even if they do, they could get the VPN and they somehow manage to find my Facebook page or your YouTube channel, they're not really going to care anyway, because, and I'm not so particularly worried about losing my job, because they kind of really need me, because I'm really the leading expert in all of China regarding quantum mechanics. Okay.
Sure.
And so, so I'm helping them. I'm helping them. China has a very primitive quantum mechanics program in all of the top. Quantum mechanics is a brand new subject in China, and I'm one of the people who's helping them to understand what is all this about. So they really appreciate me and the things I'm doing for them. So I don't think I'm going to lose my job for having a Facebook page or a YouTube page or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, and now we're on the subject of whistleblowing. Okay, I have one more story to tell you.
Sure.
And so I have a friend who works in NASA. Okay, and I met this person in 2002. Okay, so like I was saying, I woke up to the whole hoax thing in 2001. And I met my friend who works in NASA in 2002. So I asked them, I said, okay, you work in NASA, so what do you think about the 1960, 1970 moon landings? And they said, I have some skepticism about it.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, really? What makes you skeptical about it? So they told me this story. They said, what happened, there was a international tribunal which took place in the year 2001. So I'm going to try to, it's a little bit complicated, but I'm going to try to explain this to you.
Sure.
Okay, so in Antarctica, okay, they passed a law which says that Antarctica cannot belong to any one country.
Right.
Antarctica belongs to science. So any scientist can go there and they can do what they want, and no country can lay claim. So that law was passed, and when that law was passed, the same law applied to the moon as well. They said the moon also belongs to science, so nobody can go there and claim the moon. Okay? And that stood all the way up until 2001. What happened in 2001 was there was this international tribunal which came the question about mining for minerals on the moon or mining for materials on an asteroid. And they said, okay, so the conclusion of that whole international thing was that, okay, if a human being lands on the moon and can start mining, then they can claim those minerals that they mined for their own. Okay? So my friend was working in NASA, and she heard about this decision that if a man lands on the moon and starts mining, and she started thinking, wait a minute, what do you mean if a man lands on the moon? Haven't we already been to the moon? So that's what kind of woke her up to it, okay? I'm not going to mention her name because she's not going to lose her job.
Sure.
But there are people in NASA who do know about this. There's people who know about it. There's people, of course, see, NASA is extremely compartmentalized. So this comes the question, well, hasn't there been any whistleblowers? Well, not most of the people of the, 40,000 people who were working, or 400,000 people who were working for the Apollo mission. But only a few of them knew that it was going to be on the hoax. The rest of them were just doing their job.
Contractors.
So some of those people who know it's a hoax are still going on today. And like, for example, like the people who released the photos of the landing sites. I'm 100% sure that they photoshopped those, and they release some bogus photos,
Sure.
And the fact that they released those photos is kind of evidence that they're a little bit desperate to try to disprove the debunkers,
Right. Well, there was also the X Prize incident where Google was offering for. Are you familiar with the X Prize case?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let anybody go near the landing sites. It's like if you're trying to debunk the debunkers, then just let somebody go 100 feet away, take a picture, then case closed. You guys went there. It's fine. But
yeah, a lot of the debunkers come up to me and they say, "What's your proof? What's your proof?" I was like, "No, wait a minute. The burden of proof is on you."
Sure.
And I don't have to try to prove anything to you because, like I said, in time will tell all. Eventually, we're going to send people to the moon, and they can go visit the sites, and they can see for themselves it's not what happened.
Right.
Time will tell all.
Yeah.
And so I'm not worried about trying to convince people. I like waking people up, but I'm not gonna try to break my head trying to battle with people who are
Sure. Yeah. Now with you said that the Chinese government has sent the probes there. They've taken pictures that prove that we did not walk on the moon. Have you seen the evidence of that? Have you seen the pictures and the stuff that they came back with?
Yeah, I like I said, I have friends who are in the Chang'e missions.
Okay.
And I have access to that, but they're not gonna allow me to come in because it's in a top secret hard drive.
Sure.
They're not gonna allow me to come in with a USB and to take that
Right.
information away.
Right.
But I have seen it,
Okay.
and again, for them, it's not a big deal. They don't care whether or not people know it's a hoax or not.
Right. It was no surprise to them.
Right. They know. And China was also present in that international tribunal which decided about the mining rights.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like they know that was basically admitting they never went to the moon when that happened. And so it's kind of a given. And but they, like I said, they don't want to make enemies with Apollo right now, or with NASA. They don't want to make enemies of NASA.
Right.
So they're still trying to stay on their good side. They want to be able to copy the Orion. If the Orion can actually get through the Van Allen belts, they want to be able to copy that and figure it out.
Right.
So
you have personally seen the evidence that that they took, that there was nobody there. Right.
Yeah,
Have you?
It's basically you see the Apollo landing sites and the Russian landing sites look identical.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So it's not what you see on the NASA photos of the landing site. Those are all.
Can you explain a little bit what it looks like, or? I mean, if these are pictures that nobody has ever seen of the moon, what does it look like?
Let me just say that they're not as clear definition as for example the LRO.
Sure.
The LRO can take extremely high resolution stuff, but I think with the Chinese, it's 4 meters per pixel.
Mm-hmm.
That's their resolution,
Okay.
So it's not a clear resolution, but if there would have been rover tracks and human tracks going here and there, we would have seen that. Okay.
Sure.
And it's not there. It's not there. It's just basically like a there's a blast crater. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And there's so in some of the missions, they just landed, they scooped stuff up with the arm, and then they took off again.
Sure.
And some missions, they landed and they left a little rover that kind of walked around.
Yeah.
That kind of scooped around, and so and I think that in some of them, the rover could actually do things, and then the arm could pick up stuff from the rover and then take off again.
Right. Gotcha.
So you don't really see much. It's just you see a blast crater. Speaking of which, there's the Japanese who also provided so-called third-party evidence, and they said, "Oh, we've seen evidence of a blast crater," but that again doesn't prove that that a man has walked on the moon. Okay,
right.
So let's come back to this blast crater issue, because this is a really, so many people talk about this issue, the blast crater issue. Okay, so if you look at the official NASA story, or the debunker story, is they say, okay, the ship was coming down, and they could slow down, and finally when they were 5 meters, which is really interesting because they can't remember whether it was 4 meters or 5 meters when they cut off the engines.
Yeah.
4 or 5 meters cut off the engines, and then they say, so there wouldn't be a blast crater. Okay, well, wait a minute. When they were landing there, you hear them saying, "We're picking up some dust."
Right.
When they're landing, we're picking up dust. So that means that and actually when there's this camera that's looking at the footpad, and when the footpad lands, it makes a poof.
Right.
And it actually leaves a little disturbance in the dust. But then when they get out of the ship and they take a photo of the footpad, there's no disturbance at all. You know, so that's totally ridiculous. And so then they say, oh, okay, well, yeah, it would have blown. Then they say the second excuse. See, they contradict themselves with these two excuses. They say, oh, yeah. The reason that there's no blast crater is because we blew away all the dust and we landed on solid rock.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's true. Then how did Neil Armstrong leave his footprint in the dust? Like if you blew away all. So the whole blast crater thing is they don't know how to really respond to that one.
Sure. Yeah. Now another slight pushback point. Let's talk a little bit more about this tribunal thing that you think is evidence that we haven't gone there. So basically what that said was, if a man lands on the moon and mines, then these are the rules that we have to abide by. The way I heard that was, if they land there and they mine, which supposedly we haven't really mined anything. So can you dig a little bit more into that and why you think that is evidence that we have not actually gone there at all?
Well, see, you can download the PDF of the entire discussions and the decisions made, and so it's not if you download the PDF, the wording isn't so it doesn't say there if a man walks on the moon. It says it doesn't. If you read the PDF, it doesn't blow the thing. It doesn't say, oh, we haven't landed on the moon. It doesn't. But if you would have actually been in the tribunal and listened to the words spoken, then the question, the way they put it there, because my friend, had heard, because she was working for NASA. Yeah. So the reason I say that whole tribunal, the international decision was the reason I mentioned that is because that's what got my friend to become skeptical.
Sure.
And many other people, like people in China and the rest. Well, So, but it's not a clear proof or anything. But it's just, if you would have been there and heard the wording at the time, it was like if somebody lands on the moon.
Yeah. So it was enough to trigger something in her brain that's like, what are we talking about here?
Right. But I wasn't there, and I have the PDF, and I read through it, and it talks about mining on the moon and mining on different asteroids and stuff, and so it nowhere in there is it admitting anything, but
yeah. So do you think that people in NASA now are just do you think that when they are currently doing the research to, find ways through the Van Allen radiation belts, do you think that people are in the know and they're like, yeah, let's just not talk about the past, let's just focus on the future? Like, do you think that there are people questioning it now, since they're having to do, they're having to come up with technology to do what we've supposedly already done?
The official story, okay, if you ask anybody in NASA, well, wait a minute, if you went in the 60s, why do you have to do all of this work now?
Right.
Then they'll say, oh, well, we're trying to take a different approach now. We're trying to go straight through the Van Allen belts rather than go around them.
I see. Yeah.
Or we're trying to reach Mars.
Right.
We got to take special steps.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me talk about Mars for a minute. Okay. I think that whole thing is a smokescreen.
Yeah.
Because the longest a human being has ever stayed in space is 1.5 years. Okay. So that's not okay. The reason is because this. Okay, in the back of your neck, there's a special little gland called the parathyroid gland.
Mm-hmm.
And that parathyroid gland is responsible for regulating the calcium of the body. Okay? So what happens is when you go into space and you're not in the Earth's gravity, that parathyroid gland freaks out and your body starts depleting calcium. The calcium starts coming out of your urine, and so you can take as many calcium supplements as you want, but your body is not going to hold your bones and your muscles are going to break down.
Right.
Okay. So the longest a human being has ever been in space is 1.5 years, and when he came back to Earth, he was all messed up.
Yeah.
If you read his story, he said, well, psychologically, he was fine, but he had some issues, but he cleared it up after 6 months and so. Yeah. It's like, but they don't talk about his health issues. Mm-hmm. His body was completely depleted of calcium. They actually had to carry him. When he just crawled, when he landed back, they had to carry him off the ship. So 1.5 years is not going to be enough to get to Mars and back.
Right.
It's not. So actually, the interesting thing is in Stanley Kubrick's 2001, he showed in his ship it had a man walking around in circles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is artificial gravity.
Right.
That is based on solid science. So the only way a human being could actually survive in space for such a long time is that artificial gravity situation, a ship that's rotating fast enough where it's creating an artificial gravity environment. Mm-hmm. It's the only way to do it, So the whole Mars thing is a smokescreen. Oh, sure. We don't need to. We've already been to the moon, so now we're focusing on Mars. It's
50 years later.
No.
Yeah. So do you have anything else that you want to add to the moon idea, the moon hoax, and where do you think we're going with this? Like, do you think that we'll be able to actually put a man on the moon with this new technology that they're working on?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really good scientists in NASA, and the theory about this water capsule, I don't know how they're going to protect the water from freezing.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they can figure that out. And they said, if you read the Orion things, they said we have other options. We have the water barrier option, but we have other options in case the water barrier option doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think that they will figure it out. I don't know when, but I'm sure in my lifetime, they'll figure it out. And so.
Do you believe when they do that the hoax will ever be brought to light, or do you think that they'll just keep ignoring that and pushing it into the shadows.
Yeah, of course, eventually the hoax will be brought to light. You know, I heard this thing about them trying to make the Apollo sites off limits, but I don't think that wouldn't work. You know, that they're not going to do that. I think, you know, personally, I'm very optimistic about humanity and where we're heading with that. If you don't mind, I want to mention one of the reasons why I chose China.
Sure.
The reason I chose China to settle down and to start working as a scientist is because two things. One is that China does not have a private central bank. Mm-hmm. Okay, and a lot of people will try to deny that. They'll say, "Oh, wait a minute." No, it's not true. In 1949, Chairman Mao nationalized all the banks of China. Okay, it means the government controls the printing of the money, mm-hmm. not private bank, which is loaning money like in America. Okay, so because of that, it gives us a lot more freedom. But it also makes us the enemy of the rest of the world. You know, sure. China and North Korea are really the only two countries. Well, there's other countries like, for example, Iran. Okay, Iran doesn't have, it has a national bank. Okay, but the thing is this. Okay, here in China, we don't have any secret societies like Freemasons and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, so that's the main thing. Okay. I also almost was considering going to Venezuela because I have friends in Venezuela who were actually working with Chavez. Mm-hmm. And what Chavez did, you know, he made two banks. He made one bank, which is the private bank, and one bank, which is the national bank. Okay, so this is my last message is really, you know, it all comes down to this private national bank. You know, if you want to fix America, you have to get rid of this private national bank, you know. And okay. So and so I am very optimistic. I know that in the future, you know, that we will work through all these problems and all these secret societies and these private national bankers and things. You know, it's only going to be a matter of time before the people stop accepting that.
Sure.
And just on that note, you know, a lot of people were really happy when Trump came into office because he was talking about ending the Fed, you know. Yeah. And whatever happened to that? Okay, well, you need a 2/3 majority vote in the House and Senate right. to end the Fed. That's not going to happen. Okay, mm-hmm. So why? So just on that last point, you know, I have a friend who came up with an idea. His name is Jim Condit Jr. He's an ex-congressman. He was actually kicked out of Congress, but he came up with a great idea. He said the only way that we can actually get a proper vote in America is each voting precinct has a vote committee. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he said the only way to take back America is to take back those voting precincts committee, and anybody can just go to the voting precinct committee and elect your friends to be on the voting precinct committee, and then all you have to do is once you control the voting precinct committee, then you can create a paper ballot or some proper system of voting, okay? Yeah. Because right now, you know, with these electronic ballots, it's all a joke, you know. You don't elect your representatives, you know, because, you know. So that was his idea: is first take back the voting precincts, and then take back a Congress, and then you can kick out the Fed.
Yeah.
So that's my suggestion for anybody who's in America.
All right. Yeah, usually we start out talking about politics, and then we end up down a rabbit trail of conspiracies. We went in the opposite direction today. But, yeah, do you have any final thoughts on the moon stuff? And, like, any predictions on where this is going to go? Or, if you actually think it's going to be exposed within the next few years or anything? I was kind of wondering, personally, if, Trump was dropping some hints there about the moon stuff. It kind of seemed like on Twitter, so I was kind of curious if he was going to leak something out. But
there was one thing just like a few weeks ago was Neil Armstrong came into Trump's office, and there was some NASA people there, and Armstrong became extremely upset at them, and he made this comment. He's pointing at them saying, You guys still haven't got a man back to the moon yet, and he was quite mad at them, and it almost seems like not Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin.
Right.
He was mad, he was like, it almost seems like Buzz was about ready to blow the whistle.
Right.
But I kind of doubt that will happen. But,
you can kind of imagine like that he'd be frustrated because the longer they take to get somebody back there, the more it makes him. The more it discredits him, so it's harder for him to keep up the lie.
Yeah, his mental health has suffered from this thing, so he wants them there to get somebody back there as soon as possible. But I can just say for a last note regarding this is that I am personally trying to convince some people here in China to just go ahead and blow the whistle. I don't know how. I think eventually, I don't know. I'm not going to say when, but eventually, things are. Right now there's this trade war going on, and it's kind of hit China really hard. But that's not going to be enough because China, like I said, they're still trying to keep friends, and actually Trump is doing a good job of maintaining this friendship with China and North Korea and stuff, and because Trump he's an official friendship maker. That's his he'll just tell you what you want to hear. That's his job.
Right.
So, but I'm a little bit afraid of what's coming next after Trump,
Right.
And so some things might happen which aren't going to be so good, but I'm still optimistic that with the work I'm doing with the quantum energy and this free energy, Tesla technology and stuff. I think that the world is changing.
Yeah.
And the old power structures are not going that have been in place. They're not going to be able to maintain that for much longer. Mm-hmm. And people are waking up. The internet. I wish the cryptocurrency would take off faster.
Yeah.
But But I'm very optimistic, and like I said, I'm working on just saying, there's a lot of people around the world who would be very happy if you released these images of the Apollo landing sites.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that eventually, I think that. Because I'm working in this quantum energy field, and the quantum energy is that's one of the reasons they're doing it is to put it on the space shuttles.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that this stuff is coming out. We have already created the world's first quantum energy power station. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So according to the Newtonian physics, the law of conservation of energy, you cannot get more energy out than what you put in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that the laws of Newtonian physics don't apply in the quantum world. So what we're looking at is a complete revolution in the scientific thought, so there's a lot of people who are trying to stop that as well, Again, I always get, when I'm working in the free energy field, I get debunkers coming in all the time. Oh, that's impossible to get more energy out than in. I'm like, you don't know.
Sure.
I was the one who wrote the quantum equations to explain how this is possible.
Right.
So yeah, it's like what was it when Copernicus said that the Earth goes around the sun and people were trying to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing that's going on now with this quantum energy revolution.
Sure.
But the thing is they always say it's impossible to get more energy out than in. It's like, sorry, we already have a power station which has been running for 1 year, and it's producing 10 megawatts of energy 24 hours a day with a zero fuel input. Okay? It's
Nice.
already been done. You can't debate it, It's like, it's like, anyhow, so this is the revolution, and this kind of we're undergoing this revolution now, and this is what really keeps me positive,
Awesome. Absolutely. Now, Doctor, do you have anything that you want to promote? You said that you had a Facebook and YouTube page and stuff like that. Are you open to promoting those on here?
Yes. Okay. So if you're interested in looking at some of my research in the free energy field, okay, the Tesla tech and the quantum energy stuff, my YouTube channel is 0 Point Institute, all one word. Okay, 0 Point Institute. You just look YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
0 Point Institute. I also have a 0pointinstitute.org webpage, but that's really nothing there. And then, but my Facebook group
Mm-hmm.
is called the Apollo Moon Hoax. Okay. So, and it's really good. We've already got, today we have a 1,300 members.
Okay.
It really boomed ever since this Apollo anniversary.
Right.
We boomed from 900 to 1,300 members just in the last month. So it's great. We see people waking up, and so you're welcome to check that out.
Absolutely.
And I have a lot of proofs there that you've never seen. Like for example, there's one thing where the guy is jumping up onto the ladder, and his feet and hands totally miss the ladder, and he's dangling there on a string for a while. This is one I found.
Mm-hmm.
I found that one myself. And then there was another member in my group. He found the one of the Russian ship which is blowing off steam. Okay.
Yeah.
And another member of my group found the one of the radar that came loose and fell down.
Yeah.
So a lot of these great things are there, and so you're welcome to come there and ask me any kind of questions you want.
I just request to join while you were giving that last closing statement. So, cool. Doctor, thank you so much for hitting me up. Thank you so much for being here. I want to have you on for a little bit longer and do some bonus content, but for the main listeners, thank you, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Dr. Rasa Viharii as much as I did, and I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it indeed, and I look forward to seeing what things come out in the not-too-distant future. I suspect that he's probably correct, and there's going to be more to come very soon, and that's part of the reason why I'm not in too much of a hurry to get this documentary wrapped up, because little nuggets seem to be trickling out here and there as time goes on, and it's hard enough to make a documentary in a timely fashion, but it's harder when the topic that you're talking about is constantly revealing new things to you. So, but if you want to find out more about the documentary, again, you can do so. It's called The Moon, the Myth, the Legend. It's we've got a Facebook page, and it's all over YouTube and stuff. But if you want to find the links directly, you can go to moonmythlegend.com, and you can follow the links in there to support the documentary. If you'd like to support, it's on Indiegogo. The campaign is technically over. It is fully funded. Thank you guys so much. You are awesome. However, if you would like to pre-order your copy or a bundle, there's some merch and stuff that will not be available after the release. It is only available to people who pre-order shirts, posters, soundtracks, stuff like that. That you can get included in your purchase of the documentary, or you can just order a digital copy for fairly inexpensively, almost nothing, but it will support what I'm doing. And if you're not familiar what I'm doing with it, trying to make it different from some of the other moon documentaries, moon hoax documentaries. I'm not just saying, hey, the moon is fake. I'm trying to look at it from both sides. The more I dig into it, spoiler alert, but the more I dig into it, the harder it is for me to grasp that we did, in fact, go to the moon, because the evidence seems fairly one-sided for the most part. But I'm going to try to make it a two-sided documentary that shows different things, counterpoints, and arguments and things. I mean, I don't have to prove to you, obviously, that man did land on the moon, because that is so widely and easily accepted by people who aren't digging into this stuff. But I am going to do my best to be open-minded and give you guys a nice comedic take. That's another thing that most documentaries don't do. I'm going to try and make it fun and enjoyable and open this door for a new audience of open-minded people to peek that curtain open just a little bit further and look behind the inner workings of the world. So that's in the works. Again, moonmythlegend.com. It's all about why certain people believe what Dr. Rasa Viharii and I believe, and why other people, without looking into it at all, think that we are completely retarded and get very viscerally angry about it. So check that out. Once more, one more time. moonmythlegend.com. That's it. All right. Also, again, if you would like to support the show, support what we're doing here, if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, go over to patreon.com/The System Is Down and sign up for as little as $5 a month. It will support the show. It will get you bonus content every single week. It'll get you, bonus audio and video of a bunch of different shows and all of our backlog of shows. So all the stuff that you could possibly want for very, very little money at patreon.com/The System Is Down. Now, we also have Friday's show with Scott McElroy. I haven't heard it yet. I'm recording this on Thursday, the Thursday before the day that you're listening to it today on Monday. I'm recording it on Thursday. Scott's episode's coming out tomorrow because it comes out every Friday. It is the QAnon Chronicles, where Scott digs into things in the news and things surrounding the QAnon conspiracy. And I know there's a lot of libertarians, there's a lot of even conspiracy guys or domestic theorists who don't buy into the Q stuff, but the stuff that he's digging into is very compelling, very interesting, and he's doing it with a pretty open mind, in my opinion, too. So I'm skeptical on some of it, but I love listening to his take on it. I love digging into just some of the stuff that's going on, because if you just completely write the theory off, then you're not going to be looking into it. And it is another theory that is constantly new things are coming out, new very strange and crazy things. But as I was saying, I'm recording this on Thursday. His episode comes out tomorrow here in the timeline that I am in right now, and I'm really looking forward to it because he's given me a few nuggets, and there's been some great stuff that's come out in the news that I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say about it. So that is a show that was created mostly for my own selfish enjoyment, because I like Scott, I like his take on things, and I want to know more about the Q stuff without doing the research on my own. So check that out, QAnonChronicles.com, every single Friday. Also, like, share, subscribe, do all the things that millennials do on all the platforms. Twitter, Minds, Gab, YouTube, Library, we're now on, Facebook, Twitter. I didn't even mean to do it, but I didn't say things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram first. Those things need to be taken down a few pegs. We need to be saying the others first, so Good. But go find The System Is Down wherever you socialize, quote unquote, and just click the buttons. Click the likes, click the share, click the subscribe, and let people know where we are, because it won't be long, likely, before we are not able to be there anymore. And when that day comes, probably not if, but when that day comes, I would like for us to have enough of a weirdo fan base, not fan base, a weirdo base of humans that are civilly having these conversations together, enough of a base that we don't need those platforms anymore. I would love to have a website of our own or something of our own. Who knows where the future's going, but some place where they cannot stop us from saying not even just what we think, but having conversations, just discussing, just exploring the universe. That's what this show is all about, changing the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time, because conversation is completely dead. It's flatlined. It's dead. Z's dead. So I'm not here to preach to you about what I believe. I'm here to explore. The show is completely for me to explore other people's thoughts and have conversations with people. And as I learn, I hope that you're learning as well. So if you would like this to continue, please go like, share, and subscribe, and leave us comments and interact and review us on iTunes and Stitcher and whatever platform you listen to us on, so that the word can get out there. It costs you nothing at all, and it would help us tremendously to, I guess, prep for the future. Building a base of people that will be seeking us out if and when we disappear suddenly. So do that. And just, again, go out and change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time. Go out and have civil dialogue, be open-minded, be humble, know what you believe and why you believe it, but also listen to other people and why they believe what they believe. Talk to somebody you disagree with. Don't scream at them. Don't shout at them. Do it in real life. Don't do it on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And if you're going to do it there, at the very least, be civil and don't just be searching for the snarkiest response that you can. Okay, that's it. That's my soapbox for the evening. Morning, because you're definitely listening to this at 1 o'clock as soon as it comes out on Monday morning, because you were waiting up all night waiting for this to drop, right? Good. Thank you. And thank you guys for listening. I love you all so very, very much, and I appreciate you listening and supporting, and even if you're listening for free, great, because ideas are what we're here to spread. So if you'll have me, of course, I will be back here first thing next Monday morning, safely nestled into your ear canal, like what? Like the filling in a combo, like the pizza filling in the pizza combo. Not the pretzel crust, because the regular crust is better, but the filling in the combo. I am your earwax, and that's where I will be. I will be friendly to your earwax next Monday morning, right here. Same time, same uncomfortable station. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, please continue to question everything, stay uncomfortable, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks.
This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.